streaming live right now on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and on Twitch. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions for our guests today, please post them right here in the comment stream. We'd love to hear from you. Today we have Kristy McCann Flynn, who's going to be talking to us about the culture of learning. I'm very excited to have her on, and I'm also excited to introduce our co-hosts today. We have Carlos from Mexico City. We have from Hermosillo, and Laura is also from Hermosillo as well. And thank you for joining us, Kristy, from Philadelphia. So we've got a quorum from all kinds of different cities. So Kristy, please introduce yourself. Tell the audience a little bit about your background and who you are.
Yep, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. So Kristy McCann Flynn, and I am CEO and founder of GoCoach. I am actually a former HR executive, now turned entrepreneur, which I still laugh at. That wasn't something that I sought to do. I actually created this company out of anger and frustration. Having been in HR for so long, it was really tiresome of seeing people leave organizations due to lack of skill development. And then at the same time, the amount of people that we've thrown out of organizations due to the fact that they lack certain skills. And now we're in this place where we have a war on talent and a skill shortage. And, this was perpetuated by us. And so I created GoCoach, which essentially is a marketplace of coaches and a learning platform to be able to upskill, all employees in hard and soft skills, entry level to executive level, so anyone can get the development that they need to upskill anytime, anywhere. So that's pretty much me and GoCoach in a nutshell.
Well, thanks for introducing yourself. It sounds like we're going to have a very fun conversation. I'd like to think, and I think my co-hosts agree, we're very much part of a learning type of organization. So let's go right into it. What's the topic of conversation today, Carlos? Please introduce the topic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tulio. Today, we're going to be talking about a culture of learning or how to create a culture of learning within an organization. So for that, I'd like to ask you, Kristy, our guest. Kristy, why, can you tell us and the audience, of course, why did you choose this particular topic?
Yeah, I chose it because it's something that every company needs to do now. We have spent the last 20, 25 years recycling and replacing people. And then we wonder why where we are right now, where we don't have people that need, to have the skills that companies need in order to be able to do the work that is out there, not just the work of today, but the work of tomorrow. And so much money and time and effort has been wasted and spent, on continuous talent acquisition rather than continuous talent development. It's where organizations need to flip right now, so that they're not playing defense and they start playing offense with all the people that currently work for them and how we can upskill them.
Okay, thank you so much, Kristy. Okay.
So what's the solution? What's the solution? I want to jump right into it. I know Kim's going to have a million questions.
Well, I do have a question, and I think I would like to talk about this. It's a timely question before we jump into the implementation. And I just want to know for you, Kristy, to go back to something that you just said, like out of anger and I think frustration. Could you tell us what was that aha moment for you? You laugh at becoming an entrepreneur, but what's the story leading up to that, if there is one? And perhaps, is there an inspiring coach in your past who encouraged you to take this new career path?
Yeah, no, great questions. I want to say my aha moment was I was in New York City at the time, and I had just wrapped with an organization that sold for tons of money to a large PE firm, and it didn't feel good. It actually felt awful. And even though I had a nice payout, I had to basically beat the drum consistently with the CEO of how much money we were wasting per year on recycling everybody, and that we just needed to grow the people that we had, and that was going to further help optimize and monetize where we wanted to land the company a year or so. And, it was tough doing it. I had to, beg, I had to bang, I had to, yell in order to be able to do what I thought was the right thing by investing in people. And we got there, but it was one of those things where it's just like, I'm not doing this again. The only way that I'm actually going to be able to solve this problem is actually take on this problem at a much higher level. So, that was a day that I absolutely felt that my job was useless in HR, that I shouldn't have to do the things that, I had to do in order to get, the things that people need, which is, how to invest in them. So that was my aha moment. As far as coaches, I've had quite a few. There was actually no one that guided me to do this. This was a leap of faith, or what I used to like to call my midlife crisis. I started a company. So that's what I did.
Very good. And interestingly, you say, but now you do have to beat a drum, and I guess it's a different drum, and that's to convince other companies to have this kind of coaching or internal growth element. So what could you tell us, what is in it for companies? Like, why should, I think it's easy to talk to individuals, like you need to invest into your career path and things like that. But what would you say to those companies out there? Why should they invest in this?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of reasons, but I'll go back to, beating the drum. The biggest thing that we're doing at GoCoach, where I felt that my job was useless in HR, where I couldn't help people like, I'd intended to at all times. That was the whole reason why I went in HR. I created this company to empower HR. To be able to bring that empowerment and integrity and equality, everything that we want, to the forefront, and to be that evangelist for them. And so I'm truly excited that now I get to be the cheerleader for all of HR, and everything that we're doing is for them, by them, because we just didn't go and create, a bunch of technology and bring a bunch of coaches together. We actually understood the problems just because of our own experience, but listening to, all the HR people that are out there and the constant pressures that they are facing. And so the incentive for companies to be able to do this, one, that there is a monetary as far as saving time and money, instead of, rehiring the same people over and over. But, you look at all the big topics that are out there right now between engagement, diversity and inclusion, culture and all that. If you have people that are swinging in and out of your company, you have none of that. And that's the other big ROI. It's not just about the fact that we need to be able to upskill people to be able to do the jobs of today and tomorrow. But if you actually want to have company culture exists around the people that are there and why they're there. And so when you are investing in people, you're building that engagement, you're building that diversity of thought. And not only that, you're building that culture that truly represents something more than a bottom line. So if anything, GoCoach and what we've created with our coach marketplace and learning platform is not only to be your evangelist, but to be your solution for many things and to help you get what you need.
So Kristy, what you're talking about has a lot of implications, right? You mentioned culture. It's a big challenge, especially if it's the kind of culture that looks at people and even uses words like resources or human capital or assets. People are not assets, human resources. They're not human capital. They're not equipment. And I think it says a lot that's been going around for a long time, unfortunately, from the industrial age even, on how leaders approach treating people within the organization. So what does your company do to deal with the root cause of some of these disengagement or organizations that are constantly, cycling people in and out of the company, trying to find the right fit when in reality they're not the right fit themselves? Well, how do you go tackle that challenge? So what is the approach that you sort of take to, one, fix the culture, and two, introduce the concept of learning and growing as a way of being, which I'm assuming is one of your key strategies to keep people engaged and put.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about your experience has been like along those lines?
Yeah, no, it's been a lot in many different ways. Every company right now is dealing with, digital transformation. They're dealing with change management. They're dealing with not having, the resources to be able to hit the goals. The number one reason that people, leave companies is because of managers, and the managers aren't skilled to actually manage them. Right now we have close to 71% of people that actively have jobs looking for other jobs because they're unhappy. So this has all, been out there for years. And the problem is that we just kept on doing the same thing, thinking that, we would get to a different outcome, but you can't get to a different outcome without trying new things. And the way that I've always seen it is that education is the path to everything. when you're to give it like a situation or circumstance, like, I was in HR for 20 years. The majority of the coaching and development I did was, people coming in and not being able to deal with their manager. And then you peel back the layers of the onion as to, why can't they communicate with their manager? And then you find out, well, one, they don't have the core competencies to be able to do their job. They're hired to, be a product manager, but they don't know how to build a product roadmap. And so if they don't have a great relationship with their manager, it's really difficult to say like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me? That there isn't that safe and supportive place for people to be able to get the help that they need. Because, constantly we're in organizations where we're giving them grades, i.e. performance reviews, but we're not giving them education. It's just like, oh, Kristy, you're terrible at your communication skills. Okay, let's figure out a way that could be better at my communication skills. And that doesn't happen. So we give grades without any education. And so, I think that when you add that investment of people and an opportunity for them, it starts to open up the paths of all the different things, with culture and engagement and diversity, because you're starting with them. You're never going to be able to fix those problems when you don't go back to the core, and the core is people.
It's interesting. I almost equate it to like a marriage, right? You go into it, there's excitement and there's a lot of synergy and chemistry, and you know why you're getting into it. But along the way, your stuff comes up, right? And you've got to learn how to deal with your stuff and how to deal with both people's stuff, right? And sometimes you go and get a therapist and you work through it in order to be committed to that long-term relationship. It sounds as though maybe companies ought to look at it the same way in terms of, hey, if it's not working out, maybe their stuff need to work out with the employee. They need to learn something. They need to develop some new skills. Or maybe you as a leader or manager need to learn some new skills too. Is that what you're saying? And how does that work? Can you give some examples of where that worked really well and where that failed miserably? I'd love to learn from those lessons.
Yeah, I mean, everything starts with trust. If you have trust with your team and you have trust, with the people that you work with, it's a really good starting point. But a lot of times people don't have that starting point, that they have a laundry list of goals that they have to be able to meet and exceed. And if they don't, then they're not going to be there. And if they do, then, they might be able to get that promotion. But there's a big what if. And it's very difficult for people to ask, like, what they don't know, because a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. And so if you don't have that trusted relationship, with your comrades that you're working with and with your manager, it's going to be really hard to be able to fulfill a lot of other things. And so the way that I look at it is that, it's a three-pronged approach. It's one, being able to create a safe and supportive environment for people to be able to learn and grow. And then two, it's being able to provide them opportunities that are viable educational opportunities to be able to help them, with all the different things that people need to unlock within their potential. And then the third thing is that, you become an actual legitimate resource. I mean, we are living in a time right now where social media is fact and social media is education. And the problem is that social media has killed all inference. It's killed all critical thinking. It's all, it's killed all the different things that we need to be more solution oriented. And so, when I look at, the many things that are happening, within our company, and we see the data, that the story behind the data is truly important, because it's a starting point in order to be able to get to a safe place to be able to learn and grow. And I know this, in particular, I want to say it was my second job out of school, and I got my first performance review, and I got told all the things that I did great at, and then I got told all the things that, I didn't do so good at. And I was like, okay. I was just like, and my manager was like, do you have any questions? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, why didn't you tell me all the things that I wasn't good at earlier? You went an entire year to tell me that I was terrible at communication. And meanwhile, I've been bothering people and upsetting people left and right. And then number two, it's just like, all right, now that you've told me all these things that I need to improve on, where can I go get the help? And it was, to be quite honest, it was fruitless. And I walked out of that performance review and I was just like, this is a joke. And if you don't have that, connection or trust or solution, then why are we wasting all this time giving critical feedback to everybody when there's no, output for a solution of what's next?
Yeah, it actually reminds me a lot of something that we as a company here at Nearsoft use as inspiration when we developed a program of ours that we're calling the Peak Team program. And we referred back to a book by a man called Patrick Lencioni, I think I pronounced that correctly, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And I'm hearing you say this element of trust. And a lot of this comes down to just these soft skills that we're expecting people to know, but people might not have. So you already mentioned this foundation of trust. And then a lot of times we have this fear of conflict. So we don't know how to speak our minds. And then we're not allowed to speak our minds. So then we have a lack of buy-in or this lack of commitment. And then we're not holding one another accountable. And then ultimately we're not getting those results that we want, right? Which are these 5 dysfunctions. So I hear a lot about that, and it goes back to this element of trust and this ability, I think, to be vulnerable in your workplace. There's my Brene Brown. She's my girl. Love that. But going back to this idea, once companies have this buy-in, okay, like they understand this, I think we've got 2 questions, and these actually came about internally from our own people here at Nearsoft. And I think there's 2 of them, and I'll kind of shoot them out there, and you can determine which one you want to answer first. But one is, let's say we have this buy-in. How do we, I think this is the order. Well, number 1, how can companies reconcile this with their free hours, their billing hours, and get that buy-in and get their people trained? Like, what's the practicality of this? What are some of the creative solutions to make this happen, and finding that space? And then once you find that space and you have this initiative and this excitement going, how can we maintain that momentum?
Yep. No, they're great questions. So, when it comes to how people find the time and, billable or non-billable, let's just put it this way. If you're making, learning non-billable, then you're not getting back that learning. And so, learning should be part of anybody's core job and should be part of their core competencies in their development plan. As far as finding the time, it's one of the reasons that, I created, what we did, which is essentially as a coach marketplace, because it's personalized learning at scale. I remember being stuck in training sessions like 4 or 6 hours and not retaining anything. And 1, just because nobody has that attention span to begin with. And then 2, you're worried about all the 1,000,001 things that you could be doing. And so, with this personalized learning at scale, it gives the accessibility for people to be able to meet them where they're at, and that they, learn and grow, on a schedule that works for them. And that could be, 1 to 2 hours per week or 1 to 2 hours per month, but that it's very goal oriented so that they're getting to the end result of what they're looking for. And then as far as being able to maintain this and show it's going back to the report card thing, like we're reporting on the wrong things. We're reporting on all the different things that, people aren't good at or they need to develop, but we're not reporting on the opportunities that we're providing them to be able to attain those skills. And so, a huge part of what we do, and is important for any type of education platform, is to understand how the engagement is going, to understand, how the goals are within this engagement, and if people are meeting and exceeding those goals through this learning. The other thing is to make sure you're getting the 360 feedback, from the people that matter the most. And I do think that is very important. I just actually read an article the other day about how somebody was going on about how 360 feedback is the worst thing that you can do. And I was just like, well, how are you supposed to get feedback? We're all different people. And I think the other thing is, that the data is the beacon and the path to, the future. And to be able to see the data of somebody learning and growing and showing what that means to engagement and productivity and everything else, that's going to be your automatic buy-in and drive every single time.
Well, Laura, I think you had a question. Did you not? I think.
Yeah. So how can companies maintain a culture of knowledge sharing when things get difficult, for example, when sales are down or delivery issues come up? How can we maintain this culture?
Things are always going to be coming up. And are you going to react? And, when you do react, it's going to further drive down those sales or drive down, whatever shipment or delivery that you're missing. Or are you going to be proactive and going to be solution oriented? Part of a lot of the soft skills that are out there, that everybody is looking for as far as emotional intelligence, and, critical thinking and logic, it's for those moments in time when things aren't good. That just to give a personal example, we went through the holiday season and, we're a bootstrap company and, so sales were down and not only were sales that were down, AR was down. And, it's the holidays and I'm like, all right, I got to make sure that everybody's paid on time, while we get out of the holiday funk. And, I could have, pulled my hair out and screamed at my team about what we need to do with sales, or, I could have sat there and coached them as to, how we're going to get to where we are today to be able to get to tomorrow. And I chose coaching them because if I'm not coaching and developing them, then there is no tomorrow. Screaming and yelling or ignoring, the issue only gives you a short-term solution. But when you look at it from a long-term approach, which is, continuous education, you will get to have that long-term, possibility.
I love that. I'm hearing a lot of Chip Conley in there, another inspiration for us here at Nearsoft with his book Peak, right? Where I think he takes inspiration from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And our gut instinct when things get tough is to start taking things away, and we hit that panic button, and it actually works against us, right? Like you just mentioned, the short-term gain for the long-term goals. And it sounds counterintuitive, but if we're willing to invest, if we're willing to take that deep breath and tell people you're important to me, we can get through this together, actually works in our best interest. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You made a couple of comments I want to go back to. One, it sounds as though there is no better time than now to implement and continuously invest in learning. It's not like, well, when we get through this quarter, it's tough, we'll get to that. That's just an excuse. And it's actually counterproductive to the whole point of this. And two, I want to go back to the comment of vulnerability. I think, wouldn't you agree that plays a big role in both a leader's ability to create an environment where people can be safe to open up about the things they don't know? I mean, what's your experience there? Because there's still the mindset for a lot of managers and leaders to think that they have to know everything, which is ridiculous. And unfortunately, they don't play this vulnerable role sometimes, which they could powerfully give permission to other people to also be vulnerable. They just constantly put on this mask of got it all figured out. How do you help organizations break down those barriers that are often rooted in the inability to be vulnerable with each other?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I'll answer it from, my past in HR, and I'll answer it from my present of, with what, how I'm leading and what I'm doing. The organization that I talked about earlier that, I basically had to beat the drum as to, let's stop throwing people out and invest in them. I really spoke with a lot of vulnerability, to be able to get that buy-in. And at the time, people were leaving every 4 to 6 months. Like, people weren't even getting past, close to a year, service in the company. And, when I instilled this culture of learning, but by, a lot of storytelling, of how I did this in the past and where it worked, that's initially how I got the buy-in. And, we were able to, extend the tenure, from that 4 to 6 months, to over 1.3 years in a matter of 6 months, through that continuous, growth and development. And people were happy because they were no longer fearful of getting fired every Friday, because that's what people used to think, like, oh, it's Friday, I'm going to get fired. I'm like, that is a horrible culture. We need to change that. Instead, like, we made Fridays, learning Fridays. And then, currently where I am right now, I brought in and I've announced 2 more advisors, but I have like 7 people helping me do what I need to do because I've never done this before. I know HR like the back of my hand, which is great. I know nothing about, running a company, and I have a bunch of people that trust me, and, I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers. And so I'm going to bring in the people to be able to help me, get to, those next steps. And, I think that the way that we have been successful, just really goes back to my values, which are the values of the company of, just having that trust and integrity and empowerment, and being vulnerable in that. There's a lot of times where, I don't know the answer to something that we should be doing. And, I could go and Google it and find it, or I could talk to my advisors, or I could let my employees try something different. And I think, that has led to a lot of creativity and innovation. Like, when I look at, what I've created, I'm nothing to what's been created right now. We have over 200 coaches and over a dozen people that have built this over the last year and a half. And it's because of them and giving them the reins to do it. Because if I didn't, we would be nowhere. Absolutely nowhere.
What I heard is practice. If you're a leader, practice saying, I don't know, but let's figure it out.
Yep.
I was just going to say that the power of 3 simple words. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's that's the basis, right, of learning. You can't learn until you're willing to admit, I don't know.
Yeah. And it's, you know, you make a mistake, that's fine. You know, I mean, just don't make the same mistake twice. And I think but you don't really grow. Like I actually penned my last article, like just because I was frustrated about something, about how failure is your friend. You got to fail, you know, in order to figure out what you need to do next. And I think that there's a lot of good things that come out of failure, but it comes with trying.
I personally think of failure the way science looks at it, right? It's just another successful, proven hypothesis that didn't work. So in essence, there's no such thing as failure. It's just one more proven way it didn't work. And you eventually get to prove enough ways that it doesn't work that you get and crack the way it does. So we're coming up on time. Do you have a list of like 3, 5, or 10 key things that organizations should do like right now to begin to go on a journey of creating a learning organization? What would those be if you could share them with listeners?
Yeah, number one, give your HR people money. Like I'm sick and tired of HR having to fight with money. HR has the most people in the organization, which is the entire organization, and they get the least amount of money. So if you're failing at your goals, I really don't want to hear it, especially if your HR person doesn't have money. They should be the first person that gets money because they own the entire organization along with you. You know, the second thing to do is, you know, quit putting that money in talent acquisition and put that money in learning and development initiatives. It's a much easier, you know, buildable, scalable solution than constantly, you know, playing defense and having to recycle people all the time. The other big thing is to be able to show and depict, you know, your company value. And, you know, we have all these companies out there that say they have these values, and then you see, you know, things on social media where there's rampant sexual harassment and discrimination going on. So practice what you preach and actually do it. And when you do, then your people will be able to believe in you. And if you can't do that, then ask for help. Like, you know, we're at a time right now, especially where there's been a lot of leaders that have been leading for, you know, 20, 30 years. And the way that they've been leading, you know, has been successful. But like, you know, now the pendulum's swinging back, you know, the human, it's just like, nope, that's not the way we should be leading. We need to be leading with more heart and with more empathy. And, you know, leaders can't flip that switch automatically. And so it's important for them to understand, you know, what they need to do to further themselves and to learn and grow, or they're not going to be in a position of leadership. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, you know, quit, you know, jumping all over millennials. They are our new leaders. We have been bashing these people left and right, and we need to be investing in them because they have said what we should have said years ago. Enough is enough, you know, invest in me and I'll invest in you. So those would be my big 5 takeaways for companies right now.
Those are great takeaways. Thank you for sharing those. I really love the last one too. Yes, we wouldn't exist without the millennials. We're very grateful for the millennials we have. So if you're not investing in them, you're doing yourself an injustice. Thanks for being with us. Unless anybody else has any other question, we're going to wrap it up.
No, it was a pleasure hearing from you today, Kristy. You have some beautiful insight. Congratulations on your bravery in stepping out and after saying yes to your midlife crisis. I guess. It sounds like you've got a great company going, a team of people behind you. Coincidentally, I was preparing for today's talk, and one of your coaches has been previously on Dojo Live twice, as a matter of fact. Is it Todd or God? I knew this. Hold on. It's his last name. He's Italian.
Todd Giannatasio.
Giannatasio. That's right. Yes. I was like, hey, small world.
Yeah. Well, we're connected now. That's what we're doing. We're connecting it with
so instead of 5 degrees from Kevin Bacon, it's 5 degrees from Dojo Live.
Yeah. We recycle our guests too, but in a good way. Carl, coming up next. Oh, by the way, for those watching, Monday we're going to have the recap show at 1 p.m. If you've watched this and you came up with some good points from this, send them to any one of the hosts here. We would love to have you participate live on the video recap with us. You get your 10 minutes of fame. And then, Carlos, what's coming up next week with our guest?
Absolutely, Tulio. Next week, we are going to be having a conversation with Michael Posker, the co-founder of Zeotag. Zeotag is basically a company that enhances media player automatically So that's kind of in a nutshell. I don't have the topic yet, as you know, for some reason. I think it's January still, so they're kind of lagging topics. The kind of so I don't have it yet, but it's going to be happening. I'm sorry, what was that?
We'll keep it interesting no matter what the topic.
Keep it interesting no matter what the topic is, Tulio. You got it right. So that's Michael Puskar from Zeotap. And that's next week here on Dojo Live, 1 p.m. Pacific.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Kristy. Bye-bye.